well, thanks for coming out. This is the re-record of the intro. The plan for today, which we have, I think, accomplished beautifully. So these talks are designed to be kind of the improving the sailing at the sailing school as much as we can. So I tried to order them in the sense of what would be the most helpful, what is the most useful. The first one was kind of how to get around the course successfully. So, being able to visualize where you are, how to get around, understand what a ley line is, so you know when to make your turns, that kind of thing. Today's discussion is sail shape, how to make the boat go as fast as possible. So it'll focus mostly on how a sail works, and then thinking about using how a sail works to translate that into how to set up the boat, how to trim the boat, how to steer, that sort of thing. Then we'll have a local knowledge discussion, and then for our last discussion, it will be tactics and strategy. So basically, how to position yourself in the best place on the race course, and then also how to position yourself in the best place relative to other boats. First intro review question was, which side of the line do you start on? So I set up a start line that looks like this, put a mark over here, and we have the wind coming in at this direction. And so the start line we see is closer to this mark. And it seems kind of tempting to want to start closer to the mark, but we have to remember that when we're sailing upwind, the race is really against the wind, because we're going to have to tack anyway. So we can't sail right at this mark. So we can't actually sail this closest distance. We have to sail these approximately 90-degree angles. So the way to know where to start is to picture the wind. Well, the wind is skewed to the left. And so if we think of the course as a set of ladder rungs, that let's imagine that they are orthogonal to that wind direction. It turns out that this mark on the left is actually the upwind mark. And so if we start at the upwind mark, we're going to get a head start over a boat that starts down here at the boat end, which is downwind. So if we sail the same length, we're going to be ahead if we start at the pin mark as opposed to the boat mark. The second question is, who's in first, second, third? So we have a mark here. We've got a boat right here. My boats don't stick, so we'll use arrows. I have a boat right here, and I have a boat right here, and we'll assume the wind's coming from straight down. So these are meant to be all in the same ladder rung, but they're all even. They're all even as long as none of them has overstood, right? And so if we think about the ley lines here, if the wind is coming from straight down, ley lines look something like this. So these two boats are completely even. They're on the same rung. It doesn't matter that this one looks closer to the mark, because he's not going to be closer to the mark once he sails a little further. The course for each one is going to be the same distance. If you add up that distance, it's going to be exactly the same as this distance. This boat, on the other hand, has gone too far. And so it's outside of the ley line. And so even though it's on the same ladder rung, it's gone off the course. And so it's sailed a little bit of extra distance. Not always a bad idea. But you do sail extra distance, so something to keep in mind. And then if this boat were on, say, port tack, then it would have an extra. It would have an extra tack to do. Okay. Next question. Windward mark. Wind coming from straight. Here's a boat. This is the direction the boat is pointing. Is that boat fetching the mark? No, maybe, but
beware.
Yeah, kind of an important point from the talk last time is can't sail straight. And actually that has everything to do with what we're talking about today. They can't sail straight because a lot of the force on them is sideways, right? The wind is coming from here, you've got a sail, you've got some driving force, you've got some sideways force. Something has to resist that sideways force. The thing that resists the sideways force is the keel. The keel is an airfoil, or is a foil, not an airfoil. It's a foil. It needs flow over the keel, and it also needs an angle of attack. And the way it gets an angle of attack, well, the water's staying still, so it has to move through the water and also at an angle. So if this is your keel, you can't move. If you're moving straight forward, the water is coming like this. You've got no lift. But if you're going straight forward and slightly sideways, now the angle of the water is hitting the keel is like that. And that provides your lift, which helps you. So you get, the flow over your keel. It helps you resist the side swipe.
So historically, we often misjudge that ley line, but the way to correct for it is not to try and pinch up for the mark, that you just have to suck it up and make your tack and then tack back over.
Yeah, and we'll talk about pinching a lot too, because once you get slow, this angle depends on your boat speed. If you're going pretty fast, then you just need then the amount of leeway you make is pretty slight because you're developing a lot of lift for your keel. Once you slow down, in order to generate enough lift to oppose the side force on your sails, you have less flow this way. You need a greater angle of attack. Getting in right now.
Awesome, good to go. Thank you very much.
So you're going to need a higher angle of attack, which means the water is going to have to approach the keel from this way, which means the boat's going to slide sideways a lot more. So once you slow down, your leeway is a lot greater, which is why if you've ever been at the dock and trying to maneuver with like no speed and you pull your sails in, you feel like you just move sideways because you are just moving sideways. Yeah, so if you're pointed right at the mark, you're probably not fetching it. We haven't talked about current, right? You could have a helping current or something like that that could push you to the mark. So you could theoretically be fetching it, but not usually. You actually usually need to look like you're pointed a few degrees north of the mark. And then that means even though you're pointed in this direction, your direction of travel is not the same as the direction you're pointing, right? Your course is not the same as your heading because your course has to include that leeway. So when you tack, make sure you're taking into account that you're going to make some leeway before you get to that mark. How do you know if you're fetching or not? I'll cold call people. I'm not above it.
You can see that you're going to make the mark. That's how I know.
Yeah, what if the mark's pretty far away too? Yeah, right. When you're close, you're right. When you're close, you'll be able to see if you're going to hit or not. What if you're like down here? Or what if it's a distance race? Yeah, you want to get a sight, right? So if you're here, you would pass the mark. You get something on land up here. You want to keep those things lined up, and that's how you know like which way you're actually traveling. That takes that gives you a reference point to your like place on land. And so it takes out current, it takes out leeway, it just tells you which direction you're going. And so as long as these 2 points stay lined up, that is the course you're traveling on. If you're not making the mark, so you're actually heading down here, you'll see that your sight is actually going behind the mark. So if your sight is looking like it's moving behind the mark, you're not fetching. On the other hand, if you're going this way, then your sight is going to go in front of where the mark is, and so you know you're fetching. And so this is taking these long range sights is really great for knowing if you're fetching the mark or not. Okay, I've got a lot of these. Yeah.
You said it's a few degrees. In your head, is it under most conditions, sailing the rainbows, say we're in like the 7 to 10 knot range, do you feel like it is just a few degrees or do you feel like it's 10 degrees?
I don't know. 5 degrees? I don't know. Yeah, that's a good question. I would say it depends on the day when I'm out there because I don't have like a very scientific system. I feel like I'm there. And then some days I'm always thin. And then some days I've always overstood. the angle wouldn't, but the distance, the amount, it looks like you need to get past the ley line does, right? Because yeah, so judging that is both a like how far away are you, because the leverage of that angle really goes back. Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. I'm sure it's easy enough to calculate or look up. Yeah, yeah, on like a modern day close haul course. Yeah, yeah, I'm not sure. I would guess like 5 degrees ish. I don't know. Yeah, that's a good question.
It's very boat specific too. Like you get in different boats a lot. It's very boat specific. So if you get in some different boats, you're gonna see like a star really points and doesn't make much leeway. So they do really well. They got hard chines. They got a big fin keel. They go up wind rate great. So you're just gonna have to figure it out.
Also, I was wondering about the rainbows. I was looking at the one out there, and the rudder slopes forward. Is that true with all of them? The rudder slopes forward? Never seen that. Why does it do that?
Well, that rudder spin around that one.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say that seems crazy.
No.
Okay, that makes
It's fun.
that makes a lot more sense. Okay. All right. Okay. Next question. So let's say you're approaching. This is kind of there's a mark up here. You're heading to windward. You are here. There's a line of starboard tack boaters or starboard tack boats, and you thought you were crossing. First of all, how can you tell you're crossing or not? What about people at home? Feel free to chime in. It's hard to include people via Zoom. So, oh, and sorry, I didn't realize I keep stepping out of the frame. I'll try to stay more middle. So, how can you tell if you're crossing out a boat? Get close. Then you know.
You mean if you're on a course?
Yep, that's right. If you're this port tack boat, you want to know, are you crossing these boats safely, or do you need to tack or duck? How do you make that call?
Carefully.
You take it there from your
Yeah,
stern to their bow,
Right.
and if it's
And if they're
increasing,
moving-
you can cross. If it's not increasing, you cannot cross.
Yep, it's the same idea here, right? So it's a ladder rung. We're looking at ladder rungs. This boat right here, this boat is on a ladder rung underneath of this boat. This boat right here is going to crash into this boat. These two boats are on the same rung. This boat, assuming the wind is coming from straight up top, this boat right here is going to pass cleanly. So this one, if it went on straight, it's going to pass behind this boat. It's going to crash with this boat. The way to tell is when you're looking, look at a point on land up here. So you pick a point pretty far away. As your boats get closer, so this boat goes here, this boat goes here in that same amount of time. Now I'll take that sight again. If that sight is moving forward, you are definitely not crossing. On the other hand, if you had a boat down here, so you take a sighting from the back of your boat because that's the point that's going to hit. You got something back here. Then when this boat goes further, now that land is moving back. Sometimes you call this making trees, because if you look if you're looking over this bow, there's like new land ahead of this land that you see. So you'll hear it say, always call that, if you're making trees, you're sailing to cross this boat. If you're losing trees, so again, this is you've lost land because your sight was here. Now the sight is, in your vision, the sight is going this way. So you're losing land. Here in your vision, land is going forward. So if you're losing trees, you're behind. If you're making trees, you're ahead. If it's staying the same, you're just going to crash into it. And so that's what would happen with this boat here. You're going to crash in. So you think you're crossing, you realize you're going to crash. So you need to duck or tack. You decide to tack. Where do you look? You got to tack fast. How do you know it's safe? right behind you here.
No.
Wind of that. If I'm tracking that way, then I don't want somebody on my, that was my windward hip.
Yeah, so this line right here is everyone who's on the same rung as you. When you tack, you're going to lose a little distance, right? So you've got basically, this is kind of your danger zone here. So if you notice, like if you're pointed this way, it's basically to your left and then also behind you to your left, right? So if you need to do that quick tack, make sure you're looking all the way back, because if there's a boat here, you're going to tack and they're going to, they're going to be an issue. Now, if they're all the way over here, you're tacking on the starboard, right? So you tack on to starboard. Once you become close hauled, you have rights. So this boat has to watch out for you. They then have to tack or duck. Also, consider the skills of the other sailors, because you don't want to force them to, technically they may foul you, but if they T-bone you, Ian's going to get mad anyway.
But so roughly you need about 2 boat lengths to make a safe tack.
It depends on conditions. I mean, so these boats don't tack that fast, right? So your rights don't start until you are on your close haul course, and then the other boat has to have room to avoid you at that moment. So on a small boat, yeah, 2 lengths is tons. On our boats, yeah, I mean, they're pretty long, 50 feet, probably.
And you're gonna lose speed.
Yeah, you're going to lose. You're also going to lose. That's what happens up here. This is that pinching thing, is always at this windward mark, you get boats who are not making it, so they try to pinch. And so then they start going slow. Then they start making leeway. And then they have very little, once you go slow, your maneuverability goes down to nothing, right? If you're not moving, you can't maneuver, especially with your rudder. Your rudder only works when the water is moving. So yeah, that down speed tack is the one that takes like an hour, and then everyone crashes into you, and then just everyone stops. But if you're going fast and you tack pretty efficiently, I feel like 2 boat lengths is enough. I think it's like a judgment call on the water kind of thing. Okay. My drawing is now hopelessly convoluted, so let's redraw the same thing. The sad thing is actually draw and talk about stuff like for a living, and it's still embarrassingly bad. Okay, so the other question is, let's go back to that same diagram. So we got this, we got this. Let's say last minute you thought you were crossing, you're not, you decide to duck. It's blowing hard, you got a lot of weather helm. What's the danger in the duck here?
Well, you have to communicate with your crew, because if they don't ease the sail, you won't be able to duck.
Which sail matters?
The jib.
Well, so the jib is front of the boat. Main is back here. So if we let the main out, we got the main luffing, we've still got the jib. The jib is powered up. What's that going to do to your rotation? Like if we think of, we consider this like center of effort moves way forward. So now the boat is getting pushed here. The center of lateral resistance, the rotational axis is somewhere there. Yeah, the jib is fine. The jib is not the issue. The main though is what, when I crank this main on, it brings the center of effort backward. And so now the center of effort and the center of lateral resistance, when I try to turn, that main resists my bearing off. So when it's light, it's easy to duck, although it's slow if you keep your main on, because as we'll see, if your main is on hard and you duck, you've stalled out your main. So that's not good. But when it's heavy, and especially when it's heavy and you're heeled a lot, because when you're heeled, the boat is out here, the main moves away from the rudder, which is, or from the middle of the keel, which is essentially where you're going to pivot around. So that when you heel, you have all that rudder helm, because the forward drive of the main, it's like it's a lever, right? So when you move that forward drive of the main out, there's more torque that's making you round up. So the more you're heeled, the harder it is going to be to bear off. And the main itself is holding you up. So if you need to duck, if you need to bear off fast, you've got to blow the main if it's blowing hard. Otherwise, you're going to get stuck and then you're not going to be able to bear off. And that's a dangerous situation.
And I think it's important to remember that we have to signal our intent to the other boats, because if this is not a game of chicken. And so, you know, you'll just say, I'm going to duck, I'm going to tack, and communicate it so that, because that happened to me one time, we were playing chicken, and so I did tack over, and that was their intent, was to do that.
Well, I think that's a good idea. I mean, I think it's always good to communicate well. I also do tell my crew, and I think I said this last time, I said if the other boat's not a little bit nervous when you duck them, it's not a very good duck. Because if you duck them down here, you've lost a huge amount of distance. And so what you're aiming for when you duck this boat, so here's the boat here, you're aiming for that corner. Because what you want to do is you want to start your bear off early, and then you want to round that corner as close as you can, pretty close to the close haul. So you kind of drop down first and then round up around that corner. And so the best ducks are early. And so that would also help people not panic, because, you know, you see that turn down early. The part that should make them nervous is not, are you going to turn down? It's, you're getting pretty close to my stern as you come back up. You know, you don't shave it, but the more distance you put there, you're losing distance. So you want to kind of aim for going by that corner as you come back up. Not too close so Ian doesn't. Okay. All right, next question. How close can you get windward and leeward? So we've got two boats going upwind. Well, imagine the sails are right. This boat is giveaway boat. This way is right-of-way boat. They're coming together. How close can they get before this boat is fouling this boat? What are the considerations?
The leeward boat has to be able to maneuver without immediately hitting the windward boat.
Yeah, the rule
The
is.
leeward boat is too close. If it was hit.
Yeah, so the rule is this boat has to be able to turn both ways. So if this boat can turn, and remember, you know, it's pivoting when this thing, its stern turns around. So this boat should be able to turn this way, either way. This boat also has to respond. So if you're a giveaway boat and this boat comes up hard, you have to be able to come up fast. And this boat doesn't have to maneuver slowly. It doesn't have to tell you, right? So if you're right next to it, but it can turn, and then it does this, this is the boat that commits the foul. This boat, you know, it can't turn as fast as it can, but it can maneuver where it wants to, assuming, you know, there are like limitations on things like proper course and stuff. But assuming it can maneuver, this boat has to be watching and it has to give it room. And so sometimes, I feel this downwind sometimes a lot, where like there are two boats like this. And, you know, I often say to this boat, I feel like I make people mad at me sometimes. I'm like, hey, I'm leeward boat, be sure to give me lots of room. And they're like, I'm giving you plenty of room. And they usually are, but, you know, I want to be able to turn and not worry about them. And they have to be watching me. So if they're going to get close to me and I decide to do this, and I'm allowed to do that, then they need to be able to respond, right? And so as if you are the boat without rights, you need to make sure you are giving the right of way to the other boat. You don't owe them any more than that, but you have to be ready for their maneuvers. And so that's totally condition and skill specific, dependent. Let's see. And then last question I had on the review part is, let's say you got a bunch of starboard tack boats kind of approaching the mark up here, and you're coming in on port. What's your thought process?
You can tack in the zone, but you can't make any currently starboard tacking boat go above close haul, or you foul them.
Yeah, so tagging in the zone is
So if you have it drawn, that boat probably has to dock all three of them.
yeah.
They're not going to be able to get in there.
What if this boat was in here? Yeah. Yeah, what if this boat was back here?
As long as you don't force that starboard boat above close haul.
The one that's at the mark.
So what do you think in your head? What are the concerns? Like, you're thinking, okay, when do I tack?
I know you're thinking you can get inside that boat to be able to. Right?
Maybe, right? But remember, they could be making a lot of leeway. There could be current at the mark too. So sometimes could be, if it's overstood, right? So one thing in your head should be, is the boat or boats that I'm going to have issues with, are they overstood? Because if they're overstood, then you can tack kind of in front of them. And when they come up, they won't go above close hauled. So they have room to come up. And so if they overstood, that's a good time to tack in front of them. If they get to leeward of you, you have to give them room around. But you can't force them up to close haul. As long as you establish your tack and, once you're on the close haul course, they then have time to respond. Remember, they're going to be coming in faster because you just tacked. So that distance is going to close. Plus, also keep in mind that when you got a lot of boats around in here, this wind in here is all chopped up. And so your normal tacking speed is not going to be the same. It's going to be slower. What other options do you have? So you could tack right in front. And if you tack, so this boat tacks, this boat comes here, as long as it doesn't go above head to wind or above close hauled, then you're fine. And as long as you make the mark. What else could you do?
You can duck that starboard boat, go tack behind, tack with them.
Yeah, you can duck. So you can go behind and then tack. That's perfectly, you're not going to foul anyone if you do that. You're definitely going to lose both boats, but you're not going to foul them. And when you duck, again, be prepared to get your main off, especially if you're making a huge turn like that. Big turn, you want to get that main so you can spin the boat pretty fast. So that's an option.
Or just continue on.
Yeah, the other option is go through that hole. Right, go through the hole between the two and then tack. This boat will end up here. So you may lose them. You may not. It depends on how close they are. But that's an option. And then you can, depending on, as you round the mark, decide whether to try to stay ahead of them. But you gotta give them mark room. But that's, I think, things to think of as you're coming into the mark. And one of the things I kind of wrote down is that you always want to think ahead, right? You want to see where the boat's going to be in 2 links, 3 links, 4 links. Where am I going to be in that mix? And you should always have a plan, because if you just wait until you get here, your options become very limited to crash tack. Everyone's mad at you, right? And the time to make your plan is when you're back here. See the boats that are lined up. Other boats may tack in, right? So you have to see that coming too. And then think, you're looking for a hole to slide through or to tack in. And if there is no hole, then you're going to have to bail out and bear off and go around the crowd. But I think always thinking ahead, having a plan, and knowing when to abandon the plan, right? Plan B comes up a lot. Same thing with the start. Like at the start, if you're just spinning around without a plan, that's not a good idea. You always want to have, this is what I'm trying to do. I want to get to the left side of the course because I think there's more wind up there. The line is square, so I'll start somewhere in the middle, something like that. Come in on port, tack in. And then give yourself some wiggle room, come in a little bit early, and then be able to make adjustments if you need. Okay. Good news is that brings us to the 1-minute vector tutorial. People at home, can you see what I draw and follow along? Am I out of the picture too much? Any suggestions? Well, before we.
No, you're good.
Okay. So the 1-minute vector tutorials, I don't know the last time anyone did vectors, but it matters a lot for talking about wind. It's pretty straightforward, but I just wanted to point it out. A vector is some sort of quantity that has both a magnitude and a direction. So if we talk about speed, like the speed of your sailboat is 4 knots. velocity is a vector quantity. So unlike speed, velocity would be 4 knots in that direction. So it has both the speed, and we can show the speed by the length of the line. If that's 4 knots, that would be 5 knots. And it has a direction. And so this arrow is telling you both parts. The other parts about vectors is you can add them. And so, let's see. If I'm on a train and I'm throwing a ball, and I want to know which way the ball is going to go relative to the earth, I have to consider 2 things. One is which direction I'm throwing the ball from the train, and 2 is the direction that the train is taking. So if I'm on a train, this is from the top, this is my train platform, and it's going this way. This is the speed of the train. This is me. I'm going to be a stick figure. Again, to repeat, I do this for a living. So if I throw the ball this way, so I'm looking at the train car, I throw the ball here. That's the direction from the train the ball is going. But if I want to think about it relative to the earth around the train, it's not going to go in that direction because it already has the velocity from the train. So the velocity from the train is in this direction. And the easiest way to add them is just like the tip of this arrow to the base of this arrow. And then the actual ball is going to go this way. So I go from the beginning of this arrow to the end of the second arrow, and that tells me the path of the actual ball. So this comes up a lot because we're talking about winds adding together and stuff like that. So I just wanted to point that out. And so my example for this is when is a beam reach a beam reach? Because beam reach means the wind is coming from straight abeam. When we look on our boat, we feel like, okay, the wind is coming from straight abeam. If we draw it, we're often drawing these points of sail relative to the true wind. So the true wind, say, is coming this way. But boats don't feel true wind. Boats feel apparent wind. So boats are feeling the wind from the actual wind that's blowing on the earth, plus the wind it makes from traveling. Boat can't tell the difference. You can't tell the difference between those two winds. So the boat we feel out there, the boat we're sailing in, is the apparent wind, which is the vector sum of the true wind and also the wind from the boat. I would call that the boat wind. There might be a better name for it. So if we're on a beam reach, that means that we're on a boat here. We're traveling, well, let's put it at the end of this arrow. We're on a boat here. We're traveling in this direction. And so let's say we're going 4 knots, the wind is 8 knots. Actually, that sounds like a lot. Pretty fast, right? Not breeze. We're going 4 knots, the breeze is 12 knots. Somewhere in there. So this is about 1/3 the length of that line. So we're feeling 2 winds. One is this wind blowing. 2 is the wind from our own boat. And remember, the wind from our boat is not going in this direction. This is the direction we're traveling. So which direction is the wind coming from? The boat, if we're traveling this way, feels like the wind is blowing in our face, right? And so if I want to add that to this vector here, it actually adds in this direction. And the length, so this is the boat wind. This is the true wind. And so the wind that the boat feels is right here. And note that your boat is traveling on a beam reach relative to a true wind, but the wind the boat is sailing in is not a beam reach, it's a close reach. So when you are on a boat feeling like you're sailing on a beam reach, you are sailing on a beam reach. It's just a beam reach is not 90 degrees to the true wind. If you want to sail on a beam reach, then you actually have to be sailing more than 90 degrees from, you know, something like this. It's a little fast. Something like this. So you're on a broad reach relative to the true wind, but then in this case, the boat wind is this way. The true wind now is coming like that. And now, I'm sorry, the apparent wind. And now the apparent wind that you're sailing in is on a beam reach. So when you're on a beam reach, you're actually down below that 90 degrees.
So which would you trim to?
You trim to the apparent wind. The boat, like the apparent wind is the wind that you're sailing in. In fact, like if you're in an ice boat, because ice boats are like really fast, they're so fast that this boat speed vector is always like that long, which means they're basically always sailing upwind. Same thing with America's Cup boats. They're always sailing upwind because even when they're sailing downwind, their boat speed is so great that they have so much wind in their face that they're sailing at a close reach, right? They're not sailing broad angles like we are ever. So, you know, that's why when you're sailing close hauled, so when you're sailing close hauled, if the true wind is here, you're sailing somewhere around that direction here. That means your boat wind is here. So the apparent wind that you're sailing in, actually let's make another color. So if the wind you're actually sailing in is from here. So that means a few things to keep in mind. One is if you're sailing 50-degree angles when you tack, so you're tacking 50 degrees from the true wind, so you're tacking through 100 degrees, which is about what I'm getting on the rainbows. Your 50-degree angle is to the true wind, but your angle here might be more like 40 degrees or something. The angle to the wind that you're sailing in is less because the wind is actually ahead of you. So the wind is from a slightly different direction. It's slightly headed from the direction of the true wind, and it's stronger. So if you ever feel like you're going upwind and then you round the mark and it's like the wind died, well, the wind didn't die. You rounded the mark sailing close haul, and this purple line is your apparent wind. And then you're going downwind. So you've got the true wind here, same true wind, but now your boat speed is like, I don't know, like this. Whoops, keep it red. Your boat, well, let's make it black. Your boat speed is this, which means the wind from your boat is coming in this direction. And so the apparent wind is now coming from here. So it's completely changed in angle and it's completely changed in speed, but the wind hasn't changed, your boat direction and speed have changed. This apparent wind is the wind we're always sailing in. And it comes from the sum of the actual wind of your boat speed and also current. By the way, current winds matter. So sometimes, like, if you're setting up a course, this happens with the race committee sometimes, because if you're anchored and you're setting up a course, the wind you're looking at is the true wind. On the other hand, if you're drifting in the water, the wind you're looking at is the apparent wind based on the true wind plus the drift of the current. And that's the wind you're actually sailing in. So if you want to sail a windward mark, you actually want it to be relative to the wind plus the current if you want it to be straight up wind. And that's, you want your line square to that apparent wind that includes the current if you want the line to be square. Okay. Another thing this means that's important is anytime you speed up or slow down, the wind changes. So if you speed up, the apparent wind, if this boat gets a little faster, then the apparent wind gets a little greater, and it also gets headed. So when the wind goes up, you're automatically in a header. You have to bear off a little bit. When the wind goes down, you're automatically, if the wind goes down to here, you're automatically in a lift because the wind has gone from here to here. So check that, reverse it. So when the wind speeds up, you're automatically in a lift because you're sailing. No, I'm sorry, that's a header, right? Oh, we're looking at both. Oh, I'm sorry. I got myself all confused. If your boat speeds up, you're in a header. So when you're sailing faster, you're sailing in a header. So if you hit a patch of really smooth water, if you're going down a wave, something like that, when your boat goes faster, you're in a bit of a header. The corollary to that is that when your boat slows down, you're in a lift. So if all of a sudden you start going slower, then the wind hasn't changed, but your boat speed has changed. Now the wind has come to the left. You're going to have to either ease your sails or head up. The best thing is to ease your sails. But basically, anytime your boat goes down, you crash into a wave, you got to ease because your angle of attack has changed. The wind has headed, and you need to account for that. So when you slow down, you hit a choppy path, ease your sails a bit, and then as you gain speed out of it, you trim out. And that's because the wind direction is changing. Okay. Other thing about this apparent wind is that there's a wind gradient on the water. So if this is water, as the wind blows over it, there's a little bit of friction here. So you get a little bit higher wind above the water than below, which means that the true wind vector is going to be higher at the top of your mast than at the bottom of your mast. Your boat speed vector or your boat wind vector is going to be the same. So this is the true wind. This is your, if your boat's traveling, say this direction, this is your boat speed. So at the bottom of your mast, this is your apparent wind. At the top of your mast, this wind is a little greater. So we could draw it in like this. So at the top of your mast, you got a little bit more breeze. And so if you draw in the angle here, your boat speed is the same. So at the top of your mast, you got a little more breeze, and it's also coming from a bit of a headed angle. Remember, we're sailing this direction here. So you get a little bit of a header, which is why you've heard of, like, we talk about twists, like twisting your sails as you go up. Part of it is due to this velocity gradient. This is more pronounced in light wind. So in light wind, you have more of a gradient than in heavy air. And so that's something you want to keep in mind about, like, how much twist you need on your sails. And the other thing is the sail plan itself causes a header at the top of the mast for a couple of reasons. One is because the mast is straight and the jib, like as it's approaching the wind, is here. So every sail has what's called upwash, which is as you come to the sail, and we'll talk about this a lot, the wind gets directed around the back of the sail, so it doesn't come straight at it, it gets sucked up. The wind at the top of the jib feels the pressure from the rest of the sail, so it actually has more upwash, so you get more of a header. And then the other thing is that the bottom of the sail generates a lot more lift, so the bottom of the sail is pulling air away from the top of the sail due to the reduced pressure, and so that causes more upwash at the top. So basically, wind gradient plus increased upwash just based on the sail plan anyway means that the top of the mast has a more headed angle of the wind relative to the bottom. So that's why you need, the sail can't be at the same angle all the way up because it's in different wind all the way up. So as you go up, the sail's got to fall off. And so a lot of tuning your sails is tuning it to that, getting that wind twist correct. Okay. All right, so next question, how does the sail work? Why do sails generate lift? We've got wind coming from this direction. Sail, somewhere around, this is the boom. Sail looks something like this. Seems a little steep. Seems like more like a 45. Let's try. A little less angle of attack here. So how does that sail generate lift?
The pressure on the front and back of the sail.
No, it's not a trick. So Yes, it's correct. It's a foil. How does that, but, so,
The difference in the speed between the front side and the back side, or the
yeah,
top.
so, yeah, so the wind flows faster over the back than the front. And this wasn't designed as a gotcha. This was designed as, there's like 50 different theories for lift, and they're all like true at the same time, right? Some of them are wrong. So the wrong ones are, have you ever seen like a particle? So we've got two particles here. One particle goes this direction, one particle goes this direction. This is a longer direction than this, so it has to go faster. So this, I don't know if you've seen this explanation, it used to be really common. Completely false. These particles never get together at the back of the sail. Also, this particle this is not a vacuum here. It's going to be filled with, right, this foil or the sail is symmetric. So there's not going to be a huge vacuum. This particle is going to go here as well. So that is not how a sail works. But the basic idea that the breeze is faster on the back of the sail than the front is 100% correct. The other thing that's true is that the sail redirects the air. And this is kind of an important idea. So if we're looking at the breeze, as it approaches the sail, it kind of gets, there's this upwash as it gets close to the sail. And then it gets pulled down, and then eventually it goes the same direction as the other wind. And this happens like pretty far away from the sail too. There's this little, and then close to the sail, you know, you get a lot of upwash. And actually the wind that hits the mast is coming from down here. It's not coming from up here. So this is the upwash that turn upwards towards the sail. And this, like the amount of this upwash is the thing that goes up as you go higher up the sail. So more wind goes over the back of the sail and the air gets redirected. There are a couple different ways to calculate the amount of lift, and one of it is basically calculating the mass of the air that you redirect. So a kind of Newtonian physics, if you push all this air down, the opposite force is that this sail gets pushed, you know, in this direction. And if you calculate it mathematically that way, it works fine. It tells you exactly how much lift you generate. So the amount of air you push down is equal and opposite to the amount of lift you generate. The other way, or one of the other ways, and again, this, I'm not like an expert here, but, and it's complicated, so I only kind of understand it, is basically it has to do with the trailing edge. And the idea is, if the breeze is coming faster off the trailing edge than off this edge here, that means there's lower pressure here. And so as a science teacher, I want to point out that if you get a low pressure here, a low pressure can't suck on anything. Lack of particles does not pull on anything, it just pushes less. So if you have a high pressure down here and a low pressure, the low pressure doesn't pull anything. It's pushing on the sail, it's just not pushing as hard as the high pressure. It's the difference between the two. But the, you know, the low pressure is the drop in pressure is bigger than the rise in pressure. And so the drop in pressure is the big driving factor. But just to be semantic about it, it's not sucking anything, it's just pushing harder. So if, and the pressure is correlated with the speed, that's the Bernoulli principle. So the faster the air is moving, the lower the pressure. So if the air on the bottom is moving slower than the air on the top, it has higher pressure. And then what happens is, once it passes the edge of the sail, it goes up and the sail is moving. And what happens is you get a vortex on the back of your sail. In order to counteract this vortex, again, you need like an opposite vortex. And what you get is like a spin and this friction. You get a circulation effect. And this circulation, and then what happens is these two things kind of cancel out. As the boat travels forward, this is called a starting vortex, it goes away. This circulation stays. And we're going to talk about the circulation a lot. And what that means is the effect of this is that the pressure on the bottom and on either side of the leach of the sail is the same. That's called something called the Cutter condition. So what it means is you don't get this vortex. It also means that at the trailing edge, at the very leach of your sail, the wind here has to be at the same speed as the wind here. If this wind is slower than this wind, you're going to get this vortex. And so we're going to kind of use this idea to talk a lot about how sails work. But the big idea here, which is that all of these different ways of describing lift are useful. I think the most useful model for us is the circulation model, because it explains a lot of stuff that matters to us, like why you can lee bow another boat and get ahead of them, and why the slot effect works. But the idea is that you've got the wind, you've got the airfoil, and then basically you've got a circulation around your sail. The closer you get to the sail, the stronger the circulation is. It is wind blowing in a circle. And if you want to know what the wind is at any point in the sail, you add up the two winds. So on the back of your sail, you've got this wind, plus you've got wind going in this direction. So you're adding these breezes together, and they help each other. So the wind going over the back of your sail is going faster. The wind over the front of your sail is going slower, because you're adding a circulation in this direction to a wind coming in this direction. And so when you add all these things together, you've got faster wind up top, you've got slower wind up bottom, and the other thing you have is in the front of your sail, you've got wind that's going at a different direction, because you're adding a vector that's going up. And at the back of your sail, you've got wind that's going in another direction, because you're adding a vector that goes down. And then as it goes off the sail, it's going to join the free stream velocity and direction.
That circulation is because you're not on a port.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. The circulation is based on, exactly. Yeah, if the sail was going the other way and it was going up here, the circulation would be in that direction. Yeah, the important thing is on the back of the sail, on the lee side, the circulation is in this direction. On the front side, the circulation is in this direction. So this has all kinds of, like, I think this is really helpful in understanding sails, the interaction between main and jib, and also the interaction between your boat and other boats, because this circulation extends beyond, right around the sail. It extends for a while. And so if, you have one boat here sailing in this direction, so this is the boat we're looking at, because we're sailing close hauled, so we're sailing about in the direction of the boom. If we have another boat down here, we're sailing in the slow wind zone. So this boat is sailing in slower wind. And not only that, but if we add these vectors up, if we look at the apparent wind of this boat, it's actually at an angle.
How big of an area do you
It goes for a couple boat lengths. Yeah. Yeah, so if you set up, so if you're, I don't know where my boats went. So this is if you've ever heard of the lee bow position.
Can you repeat the question for the people?
He said that the question was, how far does this circulation effect extend around the boat? So it drops off as you go away. So it's strongest near the sails, but it goes for boat lengths, which is why if you're this boat, let's see, we're sailing in this direction, right? So the wind is coming here, we're sailing in this direction. So if you are this boat, and my sails are not going to go right because of gravity. So imagine we're on port tack here. So we're sailing in this direction. If this boat is here, the wind from this boat creates this circulation effect. And so this boat is stuck in the true wind plus the circulation from the sails of this boat, which means the wind is less. And it also means the wind is from a different direction. So this boat is headed. So if you've ever been in this position and you just watch yourself just go right behind this boat.
And you think you should have clear wind.
It looks clear, exactly, because if you look at your wind, the wind is coming from here. So the wind, yeah, so he said that it looks like you're not being influenced by the other boat, because if you're looking at where your wind's coming from, your wind, this is a true wind, so the apparent wind is coming in this direction, looks completely clear. The problem is the circulation effect around the sail is slowing your boat, is slowing your wind down. And it's turning it at an angle. This is called the safe leeward position or lee bow. If you are here and this boat is behind into windward, it is very difficult for this boat to get through. The sailing in worse wind, headed wind, less wind. And what happens is it tends to get spit out the back.
Okay, so now let's reverse that, put the boat on the other side, on the, yep.
Then-
So-
Then this boat is now the safe leeward. If we reverse it, this boat is safe leeward. This boat is going to get spit out the back. The other thing that's like less pointed out is this boat right here also has a circulation about it, which means that the lee bow, the boat, this lee bowing, so the boat in the good position is sailing in better wind. So not only is this boat, the lee bow boat doesn't just make this boat's wind worse. This boat makes the lee bow boat's wind better because that circulation from this boat is affecting it too. And so this boat goes faster and higher. This boat goes slower and falls off, and it's very hard to pass from that position. If you can get your, if you're here, so this is the, so let's see, we're sailing in this direction. So this is the leeward boat, this is the one.
I think so. I was getting at is that you're basically doing that, giving, you have that same effect, right? Both boats are creating that effect.
Yes,
So if you're the lured boat, so you're picking up speed then?
you are. Yeah, and you're sailing higher. Yeah. And so think about like places where this comes into play, like at the start, right? Like if you're on a windward leg, so if you're on a windward leg and boats are coming together, if this boat tacks here, so you're coming at each other, this boat tacks, this boat's in a really bad spot now. As long as this boat tacks well enough to hold this position, this boat's going to get spit out the back. So then this boat either has to decide whether it wants to try to hang or whether it wants to tack away to get in clear air. And so that's like if you're match racing or if you're like, there are two boats in the lead, and you're like, the right side of the course is better. I want to protect the right. If you're like racing this boat here, this boat can protect the right by tacking. And if this boat's going to follow to the right, it's going to get spit out the back, right? And so that's a way to keep in charge of the part of the course you want. It doesn't always work out because it depends on which side is better, and that's the thing you can do. The other place that matters is at the start, because if you're approaching the start line and you're this boat right here, like this is a bad spot to be when you start because you're going to get spit out the back. So if you're approaching the start line and you've got a boat close to your leeward side, what you're trying to do is you need to go fast and punch your bow up a little bit because you want to be like basically mast to mast. If you can get to here, then you're out of that lee bow effect. And so you're not going to sail on that huge set. You're going to be sailing in basically the same wind. So here you're fine. Here you're not fine. And so a lot of the start when it's crowded is boats fighting to get their bows, ahead. And so bow to bow with the other boat. Problem is this boat now is further up. So if you're right on the line, you're going to be across the line. So it's a struggle not to be over early, but also not to get in the bad air of that other boat. Okay.
Kind of outline. If you're on starboard tack, you've got a couple different weapons, but the lee bow, if you're on port tack, really is about the only weapon you've got. Can you kind of go over that?
It sounds like you'd probably know better than me. It sounds like, so, I mean, if you're starboard, you got rights. Right. So you're saying if you're pointing out that if you're starboard boat, you can, if you want the left, you take the left.
Right.
If you want the right, you take the right. You can go either way you want. If you're port boat, you got to give way to starboard boat. And so if you want the right, you can duck, but then this boat can just tack right on your nose. When this boat does this, now you're, this boat is not lee bowing this boat because it's behind, right? Instead, remember the wind is coming from up here. This boat's in the wind shadow. And so the starboard boat, and this is like our kind of a tactic scene, the starboard boat can control the right side no matter what. Or the starboard boat, if it's a little bit ahead, can lee bow or force them off. But if you're the port tack boat and you want to protect the left, if you're a little bit ahead, you can tack, protect the left because then this boat will get spit out the back or we'll have to tack. If you're behind and you tack, that's no good, right? You can't protect it there. So you have a lot less power. What are other things you were thinking?
Yeah, no, that's it. Just if you're not crossing, you can lee bow, and that can effectively,
Yeah.
you can you just create a passing lane that way.
Yes. Although in these boats, if you're not crossing, which means you're on a collision course, and then you go to lee bow, and this boat's a little faster, it's very easy to get. You almost have to be crossing, I feel like, in order to be able to put a tack in and stay ahead. So what you don't want to do is get too close and then tack, because then you're rolled. And so if it's marginal, make sure you tack a little early, because it's much better to be here. You know, you're farther apart, you're not affecting the wind as much than it is to be here. This is a bad spot for green.
So going back to the port duck, if the port boat executes that perfectly smooth duck, aims for that far corner, how does the starboard boat execute the slam dunk without fouling the port boat?
If they're, yeah, that's a good, if you're on a collision course, you can't slam, you have to be ahead to slam dunk. So if you want to be on the breeze, you got to be ahead of the other boat, right? You got to be further to windward. So if you're starboard and you want to mess with green, the question is, are you on the same rung or are you ahead? If you're ahead, then you tack there, then you slam dunk them. If you're on the same rung, you can't. So they go to duck you. If you tack, you're going to get stuck here, right? Because they have the speed. That's not a good place for you to tack. At that point, if they're ducking you and you're getting to the point where they're ducking you, you need to put some distance in before you tack. On the other hand, if you're on the same rung and you want to lead to the right, tack early. So you tack here, on the same rung, you tack. Now you're in the safe lee bow position. And so now you're either too far away, in which case you're still to the right. It's not a very good tack, but you're at least on the side you want. Or you're close enough that the boat's going to get spit out the back.
So you tacked into a pit.
Yes, you have. But if you're close enough, it depends on how much scope you have, right? If you're close enough, if you do a good tack, then you're going to get out of the pin because you're going to squeeze them out the back. If you're not close enough, then yeah, you're stuck in a pin. For sure. Okay. Okay, so we've been talking about circulation. We've been talking about circulation with like affecting other boats. I thought, this is mostly on sail trim, so let's talk about circulation in our two sails, because I think there's some interesting stuff here to think about. If you are the main, so this is your wind, the main is going to be somehow like this. Note that the entry doesn't have to be straight into the breeze because of that upwash. So the entry is like the angle at which the wind hits the sail. It's okay that this is drawn up a little bit because as the wind is going to bend around that curve. That's part of what the upwash does. That's an ugly sail. So the main creates this circulation around it, right? Which means that when you are the jib, you're in front of the main. Your wind is actually, we've got, so the jib is here. So we've got the circulation effect here. So we add these two things together. The wind the jib feels is lifted. So you'll note on our boats, so these are our boats, the jib cleats here, right? And so when you trim in the boom, you can get to center line of the boat. The jib, you're trimming into this outboard position. So the angle of attack automatically is hugely different, because if you think about the angle of attack from where the sail, where the tack is and where the clew is, these angles are really different, right? Because this is going to an outboard point on the boat. This is right along the center line. That is okay because the jib is operating in different wind. The circulation from the jib is, or the circulation from the main is putting the jib in a header, putting the jib in a lift. putting the jib in a lift. And so the jib can be trimmed further outboard. The circulation effect around the jib, by the way, is doing the opposite. The circulation around the jib is hurting the main. So it's putting the main in a bit of a header. It's also slowing down the wind. So if you've ever sailed on a boat with me, I probably says we're going upwind. I'm like, you know, the jib is really providing most of the drive here. We need to make sure the jib is pulling, or it's relative to its size is pulling more. And that's because the main is pulling more air over the back of the jib. The circulation from the main means that the amount of upwash onto the jib is a lot more than it would be if it were just on its own. So the two sails working together create a whole that's better than any one on its own. This is sometimes called the slot effect. The slot effect used to erroneously be explained by, this is like a big scoop, and it's scooping wind over the back of the main, so the jib makes the main better. Demonstrably false. The jib makes the main worse. The jib makes the main worse in terms of the amount of flow over the back of the main by this circulation. So it slows down the amount of wind going over the main, especially the front part of the main. So you don't get, whenever the wind bends, you get a huge increase in speed. So when the wind gets pulled, it gets sucked, not sucked because again, suction is not a thing, but it's like one of the things that like vacuums don't pull on anything. As the air goes over the back, the more it bends, the faster it goes. And so the more air you have going over the back of this main, the lower the pressure gets. But remember, the pressure has to get back to where it was approximately in the free stream by the time it gets to the leach. So the air has to slow down, right? Fast air is low pressure, slower air is higher pressure. The main, the air goes fast, 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 slower, 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 until it's about the same speed as the air going over this side. What makes sails stall is when that slowing down happens too fast. When the air slows down too fast, sails stall. So if you've over-trimmed your main, it's stalled out. That is because the air is speeding up, slowing down, and slowing down so fast that it just separates from the airfoil and you lose a bunch of lift, and the cutting condition is still satisfied, but it's actually satisfied down here somewhere. It separates from the sail itself, which is not good for you. So even though the jib makes the main worse, it solves a problem with the main, which is that the air doesn't get so fast right in the front. And so the slowing down to the back of the sail is more gradual, which means you can trim the sail further without stalling. And so this is essentially an airplane wing, right? An airplane wing, you have the wing, you have the flaps, they work together. Basically, most of the time we're sailing in an airplane wing where we want to maximize lift. And if you're on an airplane, what do you do to maximize lift? With your flaps. You're landing or taking off, flaps down, right? Same thing here. Main in all the way, that is flaps down. When is the only time we're trying to depower the main or the sail plan? Overpowered. And so what you do, flaps up, right? And so flaps up, you're lowering the overall angle of attack. So basically we can think of this point here to this point here as the overall angle of attack. When we ease the main, we are reducing the angle of attack of the combined sail plane. So thinking about the main and jib as like one foil working together as like a wing and flaps, I think is really helpful in thinking about depowering and stuff. When you ease the main, what happens to it? Yeah, we'll talk about twist. So yeah, twist is like a whole nother like, yeah. And what's it look like?
It luffs,
Like
it loses its shape.
Yeah, it luffs, exactly. And it luffs right here, right? You know, like you probably call it backwinding, like, oh, the jib is backwinding the main. That is backwinding because the pressure created by the circulation around the jib is impacting this part of the main. But the good news about that is that this part of the main is actually still working, which is the part that you want anyway. And we can also sort of think about which force everything is pulling in. But, you know, if you're trying to depower, losing the front part of the main is kind of okay, because what you're getting in exchange is you're easing the main out and you're lowering the overall angle of attack of the sail plan. And so you're essentially, you're making one foil, you're essentially retracting your flaps on an airplane. That, again, this only works up to a point. It's not a perfect analogy, but I think it's a good way to kind of think about how the two sails work together. I think the big picture is the main makes the jib better. The jib makes the main worse. It makes it less powerful comparatively, but the two as a whole are better than just one bigger sail and more changeable, more controllable, because when you have the two sails working together, you can have a stronger overall angle of attack, right? A larger angle of attack, which means angle to the wind, then you could get away with one sail on its own. If you did one sail on its own at this angle of attack, it would stall. But with the two sails together, you can keep that higher angle of attack. Generally, higher angle of attack is more power until it stalls. So the higher the angle of attack for any airfoil up to a point, but at this point it's going to stall. More power, also larger camber. And camber is overall depth. So the deeper your sails are, the more power they're going to generate. But again, as the more camber, you get that really fast acceleration and then the really fast deceleration. So more camber makes it stall faster.
I just think it's important to like see the big picture, like your sails are working together and that's how you're going to go fast. And if they're not working together, you're going to stall. So people don't always recognize that they've stalled. So they need to like feel it. You just have to feel it, like, oh my God, I'm not going anywhere. The other people are, what's going on? And then you adjust your sails.
Yeah.
That's just to me the big picture.
Yeah, 100%. I think most of the, I think at our races, most of like if you're in the back half, a lot of it is not sailing fast all the time. And it's really easy to see. So if you have like an airplane wing, you can actually adjust it to zero angle of attack, right? And you can adjust it so that you get zero lift. You can't do that with a sail because once you go this way, the pressure on top is now equal to the pressure on bottom and the sail is flexible, right? So because it's flexible, that pressure is oscillating back and forth, it starts luffing. So you can't do that with the sail. So with the sail, you basically, and it's easier to think just one sail at a time here. So let's think jib. So if you have a jib, so this is the forestay. The wind is coming this way. So your boat is sailing this way. So we've got boat. So the jib is, it's a little hurtful when you laugh, but you got your jib pointed this way, right? So your jib's in essentially all the way. So you can't make it, you can't increase your angle of attack by trimming it. You can reduce your angle of attack by easing it. But when you're sailing upwind, most of the angle of attack of your jib, in most cases, is controlled by steering. And so if you're pointed in this direction, now I'm self-conscious about my boats.
Those are good.
No, they're not. Molly said they were bad. Okay, so if you're sailing this direction, so our jib has gone from here to here. We've increased the angle of attack. When we increase the angle of attack of a sail too much, so here's our sail. Let's say this is too much angle of attack. What happens is, with a bigger angle of attack, you get a lot more upwash. So you get tons of breeze coming over the front edge of your sail. That tons of breeze means it has to accelerate really fast. So you get a really strong low pressure here. it also means it needs to decelerate really fast to get to the end of the sail. And so what happens is, like, as the flow goes, there's a boundary layer that's getting turbulent, that's always there. But as the sail flows, once it goes from like here to here, it has got to lose a ton of speed. The pressure goes up, it's basically running into a wall. And so what happens is it stops and you get these like the stalling, right? And so that if your angle of attack is too high, you stall out the back of your sail. If your angle of attack is too low, what happens is you have very little upwash here, relatively. And so once you go and you have, you know, kind of upwash going in here, basically the pressure here and the pressure here aren't really different. And so that means it's like, it fluctuates really quick. That's when you get the luff. So this is too little angle. This is too much. And we want to sail with the right amount, right?
You're getting left in both, but it's in a different position, right?
No, you can't see this.
You can't see that. Right?
Yeah, you can see it. You can see it with their leech telltales that will tell you a little bit,
Right.
but you can't, there's no luff. So there's no visual indicator.
Telltales are how you're going to read.
And so this is easy to see, you'll know. This is almost invisible. So what do we do? How do you make sure you want to be between these two positions, right? You don't want to be, so this is good. This is too little angle of attack, your sail starts luffing. So when your sail luffs, you fall off a little bit until it stops, right? But then you're like sailing and you kind of sail and you kind of sail and you kind of sail. Can't see it. So how do we know?
The one comment that I was having is, you would think that if you have the telltales at the back of the sail, then you would know that you have turbulence, but we don't have it in the rainbow, right? So I mean,
I think I'm missing a pretty important point here because we're talking about jibs. Because there's two things that happen when you have too much angle of attack. So when your sail stalls, it sails from, and this is a problem with my drawing, it stalls from both ends at the same time. So you've got two problems. One is you're stalling the back of your sail. The other is that the front of your sail, this bend is too much. So the higher the angle of attack, the more the air has to bend around the surface. And so you get stalling here. And then what happens is it reattaches in the middle. So when your sail stalls, it stalls from the two ends towards the middle. So this is kind of the key here, is when you start to stall your sail, the front of your sail, you can see because this, when you get this thing here, the pressure starts to get a little bit weird and you have turbulent flow. And so when you have turbulent flow, your telltales don't stick. Right? You want, when those telltales aren't sticking, it's because you've stalled out the front of your sail. If you stall out the front of your sail, you've also stalled out the back of your sail. The front of the sail stalls out because this acceleration is too fast. The back of your sail stalls out because this deceleration is too fast. And so both of them cause separation between the airflow and the foil. The front you can see because your telltales on the lee side of your jib will start to flutter. So that tells you you're stalling out the front, your angle of attack is too high. So this is why, like you're sailing, you're watching your telltale starts to flutter on the outside of your sail, you need to go in. If you go in too far, you will start to luff, although before you luff, the pressure on the inside will start to, sometimes you'll see that inside telltale start to lift, start to get a little wonky. That means you're probably getting a little too close to the wind, you're about ready to luff. So as you fall off the breeze, the only indication that your angle of attack is too high, which means you need to point up. Remember, pointing up is pointing the bow to the wind. So when this telltale right here starts to get wiggly, starts to go in the wrong direction, that means you are stalling out this air right along the front edge of that sail because it's accelerating too fast, because the angle of attack is too great. And so that means bow down. When you're starting to lose, your angle of attack starting to get too low, you're going to luff eventually before that this little telltale starts to go. Between those 2 points, there's a little bit of wiggle room. It's not like there's a few degrees there where you can go up and down, and they're not all the same. I think a lot of times, I think the most common is sailing way stalled out, so stalled out that you're like really slow. The other thing I think that is common is trying to pinch just a bit too much, like trying to keep that boat right on the edge there, because you're not, the greater the angle of attack, the more power. And so you're depowering the boat. And so you'll feel it kind of like stand up. Angle of heel is a really good indicator. Like when you feel the boat start to stand up, you're losing power. And so I would say, like, you know, press the jib is kind of a sailory thing to say. What that means is bow down a little. Bow down, dig your shoulder into the breeze a little bit, and let the angle of heel direct you, because that angle of heel really helps you feel kind of within this zone of acceptable sailing, how you're really doing, right? Because this way is more powered, this way is less powered, more pointing, and the right place to be, yeah, you know, it depends on the conditions. If it's wavy, I'll be over here. If it's real choppy, you know, sail on the fat end of what's acceptable. If it's really smooth, then you can point a little bit higher.
Hey, Isaac.
Sorry, I'm pointing in the wrong direction. Yeah, what's up?
Hi, it's Dana. I have an opposite question because my mind works differently than most. So let's say you're being overpowered by wind. Okay, it's the opposite, right? So now you're feeling like you just, you know, there's too much out there, storms coming in. I always thought you'd be better just lowering the main and coming in with the jib, but are you saying you're actually not and just leave both because when you don't have the two together, you're not optimizing?
It depends on, no, I mean, that's conditions. The problem with lowering the main is control. So if you lower the main, you've only got a jib, right? So if this is your boat here, you've only got a jib, you've got no main. The force on the jib is right, this is a bad marker. The force on the jib is like right here, right? Your boat is rotating around this axis right here. So the problem is that you've got this huge lever arm, where if you resolve this into vectors, you've got some, well, not good vectors. Try that again. You've got all this right here is force pulling the sail sideways. And this little teeny force right here is your forward drive. So you do not have very much forward drive at all, but you have a lot of force pulling out, right? And it's pulling out relative to this axis of rotation. What happens is your boat's going to spin off the wind out of control. You can't go upwind with just a jib. You can kind of go upwind with just the main, but not because you can control but not very well. So with the sloop rig, both sails work together to sort of balance those forces so that the boat doesn't want to rotate along its axis. If you're sailing downwind in a huge amount of breeze, so you've got a huge amount of breeze this way and you're sailing like basically in this direction, in that case, if you have your jib only, you'll be fine because, you know, the jib is pulling this way. That's basically, you know, your direction of travel, if you like. So you have much less rotation force and much more force in your direction of travel. So you can sail basically downwind with a jib, but you're going to have a lot of trouble maneuvering. And you're not going to be able to sail upwind at all. If you drop your jib, that doesn't gain you a ton of, you don't drop a ton of sail area with the jibs on the rainbows. You know, if you had a huge Genoa, it would.
Yeah, I was thinking of maybe a bigger boat.
Yeah, in that case, you know, if you drop, but basically ideally you want to shorten sail in tandem but you know, that's not always easy. And you know, honestly, when we had that huge squall, you guys dropped sail, right?
Well, we tried to read. But
Yeah.
The hardware didn't hold up.
Yeah, I mean, it
So
just,
I had to drop it anyway.
It just felt like scary being getting up there to reef.
The reef line just pulled right out.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for me, like basically when the breeze comes up like that, I just want to be like in the main part of the, I don't want to try to get up on the bow because I want to stay in the boat. But if you have like a lot of warning, then if you reef, then you still have both the main and the jib. And so you have balance of the boat, but you have less total sail area.
Yeah.
From a racing perspective, if you're overpowered, I usually don't ease the jib very much, because normally what I try to do, so the wind is coming this way, our boat is traveling in this direction. Our jib is like this, and our main is, actually our jib is more back here. So here's our jib, here's our main. What I usually try to do is ease the main, because when you ease the main, what you do is the overall angle of attack has gone down. And so the two sails working together have less lift, for one thing. The other thing is that the jib is still drawing, and the jib, so if we think about the force of a sail is basically not exactly 90 degrees to its axis. Axis is not the right word, but 90 degrees from, like, if this is the boom. The force is about a little in front of 90 degrees. Because your jib is cleated a lot further outboard, the angle is a lot more forward. The jib is giving you more forward force relative to heeling force. The main is giving you more heeling force relative to forward force. So easing the main is going to do much more to reduce your heeling than easing the jib, just from the direction in which the main is pulling. The other thing is it reduces the amount that your jib is pulling as well, because you're lowering the angle of attack of the entire airfoil, so that circulation goes down. So you reduce the amount that it pulls. The problem is you're limited, because at some point, your main starts luffing so much that that's not really useful. And then at that point, you need to crack off on the jib some too. But usually when racing, I leave the jib cleated and mostly try to ease the main. Once you start easing the jib, your pointing is going to suffer a lot. You're going to be, once this jib starts getting out here, you're going to have to turn the whole boat in order to have the jib angled the right way to the wind. And you're going to lose your pointing ability a little bit. So I think that's a little different than your question, but that is usually how I control heel.
That's good. Thank you.
What do we want to talk about? I can tell you what's on my list. We can talk about twist. We can talk about trimming at different points of sails. I feel like it's something that comes up, like reaches versus downwind versus upwind, because almost all of our talk is really focused on upwind here. Kind of similar on a reach, and then downwind, that all goes away. It's all different.
Hey,
What would be? Yeah.
Can we talk a little bit about heel angle and its impact on boat speed? If you start heeling too much, you're going to start to lose speed.
Yeah. So a couple of reasons. One is that as you heel, your sail plan becomes less efficient, right? The draft of the sail, instead of being in a sideways direction, is pointed down. And so the cross section sideways are all different. When the boat is heeling, so this is your boat. The other thing that happens is, let's compare it to like an upright boat. So when your boat is upright, the sail is developing a force that's like basically a little bit forward and pretty sideways. So you've got a lot of sideways force. That sideways force is making you want to heel. That's being counteracted by your heel. Well, it's being counteracted by the center of mass of your boat. So the entire boat, not just the keel. And then the forward vector is pulling the boat forward. When you heel like this, a couple of things happen. One is that your sail becomes less useful generally. Your keel becomes less useful generally. So you're going to slide sideways more because you're generating, in order to generate enough lift to counteract the forces, you got to make more leeway. So when you heel, you make a lot more leeway. And the other thing is that forward vector in your sails. So the part of your sails is actually making you go, is now, this is your axis of rotation. So if we think about the boat rotating like this way, like turning, the forward direction, this doesn't look forward, the forward direction that your power that your sail is generating makes your boat want to turn into the wind, which is why as the boat heels over, it wants to round up. It rounds up because you're moving the pivot point and the effort point are like sliding over. And now it's pulling the boat forward into the board, and it's going to rotate around this axis. So that's why when you start to heel, you got to start pulling on the tiller. The tiller will start fighting you, and the boat will round into the wind. So you pull the tiller, it'll round into the wind, you'll pull the tiller. The other thing is when you pull the tiller, you're using your rudder, and that just dead slows you down. Every time you use your rudder, you're slowing down. So that's, I'm not very scientific about it. When I feel like I'm fighting the rudder, that's when I feel like I'm really slowing down. But, you know, maybe I'm slowing down appreciably bit. Maybe I should be easing sooner. I don't know. But when I feel like I'm really fighting the tiller, I got a ton of weather helm. That's when I start to ease off the main. And so when you ease off the main, you'll sit a little taller. And, you know, you won't be making as much leeway. You won't be, your sails will be a little more efficient. Although being efficient doesn't really matter at this point because you're overpowered. But you won't be creating nearly as much drag with your rudder, which is when you have it like at a 45-degree angle. That is not a fast way to go upwind. So should we talk about, do you all want to talk about like sail shape a little bit? Like how to like camber and power and so.
Before I move on, I just want to, I think some boats are designed to go better when they're heeling. So the question would be is to find out exactly how much to heel to be optimal before it turns bad.
Yeah, for sure. And Rainbow's what? Yeah, so when you heel a little, it's designed into like the plan. A little weather helm also makes the boat sail better. If your helm has no weather helm at all, it feels a little squishy, like it feels weird. So usually a little bit of weather helm is like inflation, like the right amount is okay. And then the other thing is that it reduces, like it lengthens your water line a little bit. Like if your boat is kind of shaped like this, which our boats are, the longer the water line, the faster you can go because you're limited to what's called your displacement wave. Waves in water travel faster when they're longer. So if you lean the boat a little bit, you've got this much boat in the water. So you've got a longer water line, so you can go a little bit faster. So that's another reason why a little bit of heel can make you go faster. And yeah, it's all like, I'm sure there's an optimum. I have no idea what it is. Definitely in light air, I would sit to leeward, like if it's just really light, both to get a little bit of, lengthen my water line a little bit, get a little bit of weather helm so that the tiller, like I can feel like I can control the boat a little better. And also because when you heel a little bit, gravity helps your sails fill. And so if you're having trouble getting that aerodynamic shape, a little bit of heel can help. And then in moderate breeze, I usually don't worry about it until I feel like the weather helm is getting to be a bit much, or like a puff is coming. So remember, if a puff comes, if you don't do anything and that puff comes, your boat's going to heel way over, and you're also going to stall your airfoils. And so stalling, by the way, doesn't reduce your heeling force very much because there's still a ton of drag. So it's also going to stall your airfoils because you've just got that huge lift. So if you see a puff coming down the water at you, it's actually good to ease. So you kind of like ease both to not get like laid on your side when it hits you, but also to make your sails drive you forward when the puff hits as opposed to stalling out. So the best approach is really hard with the cleating, with the aft cleating, is when you see a puff come, ease the sail let the boat accelerate into the puff, and then trim back on. So as you trim back on, you can kind of head up to your best close haul. But the fastest response is ease, accelerate, because when you ease too, if the boat's going in this direction, here's your sail. When you ease the boom, you know, the force is going to be a little more forward. So you get, if you really want to make the most of the acceleration from a puff, ease the boom out, you get more of this forward drive without as much of an increase in heeling force. And then as your boat speed goes up, that wind is going to come forward again. So you have to trim. You can't leave it there. So ease, accelerate, trim to make the most of a puff. And then if the wind is dying, it's the opposite, but you can't really trim in anymore. So the wind is dying, you got to get your bow down. Right? You got to like bear off, because that's the only way if you're going upwind that you can do that.
I have a question though. So, like, doesn't it depend on the puff? Like, if I'm beating to a mark, then I will ride a puff up every time.
If you're what?
If we are fetching, if we're beating to a mark,
Yeah.
sailing close,
I do that.
called, I always head up on a lift.
Yeah, I always do too.
Okay.
But the reason is because it's harder to with the
Oh,
action.
sometimes I can gain the ley line.
Yeah, so if you get a puff, you can. But are you talking about you feather into it? But you're saying like the puff, the wind comes up, so you feather the boat up.
Yeah.
Yeah. So feathering the boat up has the same effect on your sail trim as easing off. The problem is you also lose your jib a little bit. So you're like so the trade-off is if the puff hits if you head up so this is what I do too. I have heard that it's faster and better to, on a small boat, it's ease, hike, trim, right? You ease, and then you come up like with the breeze. And, but I don't really know which is better. You're right that you gain a little height this way, right? So you're feathering to windward. So there's a trade-off between, if you ease, hike, trim, you're going to go a little faster. If you feather into the breeze, you're going to go a little slower and higher. And I think.
And then I bear off on a head.
Yeah. So not changes in wind direction. So changes in wind direction. If you get a lift, definitely go up with a lift. If you get a header, definitely go down with the header. I was talking about if you have like a straight puff coming down the course.
Kind of like velocity headers and velocity.
Yeah. So if the wind is coming this way and you get a big wind, a big puff coming down at you, that is a lift, but it's a lift not because of a change in direction. It's a lift because of the change in wind speed. So the typical puff, like if you just have a puffy day, but the wind is pretty constant. I also feather into the puff. That's just because it's easier and because you don't have to have the crew try and like ease the jib and trim the jib and that kind of stuff. But they tell you, I don't know how true it is, that it's faster to ease, speed up than trim in.
But most of ours seem to come with a little bit of a change of direction, right?
Well, the change of direction is usually, it could be a real change in direction, like the puff could come from there, or the puff could come from here, or it could just be a change in apparent wind direction, which is the true wind is coming from the same direction, but when it's stronger, it makes the like true wind component of the apparent wind greater compared to your boat speed. Your boat speed is coming from this direction. So basically, if the wind gets stronger, it seems like it's going behind you a little, just from it's a bigger component of your apparent wind. But that's temporary, which is why if you, but if you bow up into it, then that also seems to, that also works. Maybe better, I don't know. Okay, so a couple big ideas we talked about earlier, which is that camber is power, angle of attack is power, but camber and more power also comes with more danger of stalling. Is thinking about how to set your boat up for the wind. So I'm curious, when you guys go out there, what are you thinking about when you set up your boat? Like, how do you put everything on? How are you deciding how much tension to put on? How flat the foot of your jib, where you put your jib cars?
I kind of first just guess. And so, well, when it's slack at the dock, like if it's a windy day, you want everything tight, but sometimes you can over tighten and you get that crease. And then like sometimes when you're just sitting at the dock, that crease is pretty significant, but once you get underway, your sail is properly trimmed.
Yeah.
I usually set the cars for going upwind because I think it's more forgiving downwind to just ease, and even if the car angle's off a little bit, so what? You're still, sails are still acting pretty much like barn doors, but upwind, it's pretty critical. If that car is too far up, you're going to lose the whole shape of the jib. It's not going to work very well.
Yeah, you want to talk about twist? That's like maybe a good. So we talked about how as you go up the sail, the wind becomes like, if this is the bottom of your sail, at the top, like if you're sailing, so let's see, if we're sailing in this direction, at the top, the wind is essentially coming from here. So it's more breeze is coming from a slightly different direction. So as your sails go up, the angle of attack has to change as you go up. This is called twist. The way you control twist is, so if this is your sail, and then you also have your jib. So we have twist on the main, twist on the jib. The way we control twist is with moving the back part of the sail up and down. If the sail comes up, then we have shortened the distance between the clew of the sail and the head of the sail. And so we're able to get a bigger curve in the leech of the sail. And the bigger the curve is, the more the twist in the sail. In the jib, we don't have a boom, so we don't have anything rigid. But it's the same thing. If we move the clew of the sail, if we shorten the distance between the clew and the mast, we have more, the clew and the head, then we have more twist. Because if this comes up here, we've got the same length of sail, and so that same length of sail can twist off, the same length of the leech can twist off, and so we'll get a bigger angle. So with this, we control this with the sheet, and then we can also control it with the vang. So the sheet and the vang are the things that are pulling down on the back of the sail. For the jib, we're controlling this with car lead position. And the reason is because the only thing we're controlling the jib with is this floppy line here. This floppy line is led somewhere here. If we move the car forward, then we're pulling more down on the sail. We're pulling down on the leech. And so we take twist out. So car forward, less twist. Car back, we're pulling more on the foot of the sail, but we're pulling down less with the same amount of sheet tension. So when we pull down less, we have more twist, because we're less able to pull this curve out of the sail. And so these are the controls we have. So basically, your plan is you want to maintain a good shape all the time, all the way from water to the top of the sails. The problem is that's impossible to do, right? The boat's swinging around, the wind's coming in different directions, you're speeding up and slowing down constantly. Wind direction is always changing. So let's say if there's one thing that come from this, I would say wind direction is constantly changing over all of your sails. And if you just set everything and sail in a straight line, you're going to go slow. You have to be aware of where's the wind coming from. When you're slowing down, ease out. When you're speeding up, trim in. Keep, upwind, really focus on sailing in the groove. And sailing in the groove is your tails are flying. And almost as important or more important is that heel angle. You'll feel it power up when you're in the groove. And when you're out of the groove, you'll feel the boat stand up. And when the boat is standing up, you're either too high or too low. And you should know which one it is. If you're too high, press the jib a little. You'll feel it power up. And that's, sailing upwind takes a lot of concentration. this boat setup stuff is also important. The other big thing about twist, and the thing I want to emphasize, is you want the twist here and the twist in the main to kind of mirror each other. Because remember, these are like airplane wings. You want that slot to be relatively consistent all the way up. Technically, the jib needs a little more twist than the main. But basically, you want the slot, your basic settings should be set the twist in the jib, mirror the main. And so I think probably with 5 minutes, I would say the starting points are a good rule of thumb. You've got a batten up here. The shape of a sail should be round and then pretty flat at the bottom. If you got a sail that looks like this is the back of the sail, that's bad. So you need to do something about it. We can talk about that. If you got a sail that looks like this, the batten is going to be right here. You essentially want that batten to be parallel with the boom. It's going to be further out. So, you know, it's going to be over here. But basically, so the sail kind of twists as it goes up. That batten is going to be here, but pointed in the same direction as the boom. This isn't like a magic number. This is just a starting place. That gives you about the best twist. With the jib, the starting place for the jib is so that it luffs. You've got telltales here, here, and here. You want these telltales to basically luff at the same time. If this luffs first, that means too much twist. That means you're losing the top of the sail before the bottom. That means you need to trim the top of the sail more. And by luffs or lose the outside telltale. So both will go together. Or inside telltale. Inside telltale. So that means you need to trim the top more. The way you trim the top more is by pulling the sail down. That's car forward. If this luffs first, so car forward. If this luffs first, that means the top of your sail is trimmed more than the bottom of your sail. You need to trim the bottom of your sail more. Car back. Because then when you move the car back, you're trimming the bottom of your sail relative to the top. Twist on the main is basically sheet tension. We don't, some of the boats have travelers. I'll say our sail controls are not super complex because there's a lot that goes on in a boat. One thing that happens also that's important is the mast bends. And this mast bend, when the breeze comes up, when you pull the sheet on, you're also pulling the mast back. And that does a couple of things. It pulls the draft forward in the jib, it pulls the draft forward in the main, it flattens all of your sails. When you release your sheet, you also release the mast. So one thing that for the boats without travelers, I would suggest, when the mast goes up like this is more power. Which usually when you're easing the sheet, the last thing you want is more power. So unless it's like really blowing out there, if you're just like mostly want to be powered up, but want to be able to ease a little and puff, so most of the conditions we sail in, you want your vang on. Because if your vang is on, it holds the boom down even when you ease the sheet. And what that does is when you ease the sheet into a puff, if the first thing that happens is your mast straightens up, that first few inches of your sheet is actually powering up your rig, which is the opposite of the goal. So then you have to ease your sheet really far out in order to twist off the top of the main to depower. If you have your vang on, it keeps the mast, you know, we don't have a very sensitive mast bend controls. We don't have backstays. We don't mess with the rig tension, which matters a lot. When you ease your sheet, what you really just want is for the boom to go out. You want the sheet to be equal angle of attack. So basically you want your vang on to keep your boom down. So that when you ease the sheet, the boom just goes out, but still pulling on the top of the mast. So you still have whatever mast bend you have in there. You're not powering up when you ease. So twist is super complicated and everything affects everything. I think the best thing to do is set it up, go out there, look at your sails, looking at your sails. And hopefully today, like thinking about what your sail should look like has helped us like think a little bit. You want to see you want to see a relatively consistent, probably more like this, right? A relatively consistent slot between your main and the jib all the way up. If the top of the jib looks like it's like, and they get further apart. But if you feel like at the top, the jib is like this, or at the bottom, you've got a hook on the jib, like you've got this kind of like thing going on here. These are all problems that we can get rid of by changing sheet tension, by changing leads, by changing halyard tension. So jib halyard tension is one that's kind of helpful. The more jib halyard tension you put on, the more it brings the draft forward. So this is more, this would be less. I think if there's any control that I've been messing with more, it's been jib halyard tension. I've been easing my jib halyard tension a little more. It moves the draft back a little bit, but it gives me, these sails are kind of, if you have your jib halyard tension on too far, you've got this huge curve here, which means more power up front is actually kind of good, except you can't sail as high because you've got to, what's that? Yeah, because your angle, because the front of the sail is like right in the wind. So if you want to be able to sail higher, ease your jib halyard. Problem is when you ease your jib halyard, if you ease it too much, you're gonna get this big hook in the back. So rules of thumb here for like, turns out this is like maybe a 4-hour talk now. Rules of thumb is look at your point of maximum draft. You want this to be about 40%, a little forward of the middle. So if your deepest part of your jib is too far back, a little more jib halyard tension. If the deepest part of your jib is too far forward, a little less. This is a good ballpark to aim for. As the breeze goes up, if you want to keep it here and more breeze, you gotta have more sheet tension because everything's stretching. Main, you want this about 50%. Maybe a little better, a little forward than a little back. We'll say less than or equal to 50%. And if you see that the deepest part of your sail is back, you want to put tension on the front of your sail. That's downhaul and halyard tension. So you can pull the boom down, like on a setup on a windy day, I'll kind of hang on the front of the downhaul a little bit and then put some force on it and then cleat it. You may also want to leave a little wiggle room in your halyard so you can put, that's a little, you have some leverage there, some purchase. So tension on the front of your sail, jib halyard, downhaul, main halyard, will pull the draft forward a little bit. Slacking it will move it back. There are effects of both. I like mine a little slacker because I can point higher. Pointing higher is also less forgiving. So the rounder it is, the bigger window you have. So for instance, choppy day, a little more forgiveness. More twist is also more forgiving. So choppy day, boats all swinging around, the wind is coming from a different direction all the time. If you've got a perfectly set up sail for one exact wind direction, you're only sailing in that one exact wind direction occasionally. So if you have more twist in your sail, it's less perfectly set up for that one wind direction, but better set up for the fact that you're like, so I can talk longer about sail setup, but yeah, it seems like maybe Lily thought 2 hours of me droning on about something boring that was not for her today.
Hey, thanks, Isaac. This is great.
Thank you, Isaac.
Oh yeah, thanks for letting me talk about
Thanks, Isaac.
circulation and vectors.
It was fun.
It's a hard concept. Yeah.